All right, so moving on to our next example, we're going to translate between recursive and explicit definitions. So given the recursive definition, here it is, what is the explicit definition for the geometric sequence? So just a reminder that the explicit definition is a sub n equals a sub 1 times r raised to the n minus 1 power. So in order to write an equation, we need the first term and the common ratio. So let's look at the recursive formula to see if we can identify those. So let's look at our recursive definition and see if we can identify those. So can we identify the first term? Well, the first term is always given to us in the first line. N equals 1 is the first term, and that is a 5. So A1 is 5. And then the common ratio comes from the second line. You take your a sub n minus 1, your previous term, and you multiply it by the common ratio, and see how we're multiplying it by the 1/2. So our common ratio is 1/2. All right, we have the two pieces of information. Now let's write our explicit definition. A sub n equals the first term 5 times our ratio. Maybe I'll just put this one in parentheses because it's a fraction. So there's my 5 times the ratio raised to the n minus 1 power. There's an explicit definition. All right, part B, given the explicit definition, what is the recursive definition for the geometric sequence? So again, the two things we need are the first term and the common ratio. So we just have to make sure we're familiar with the structure of each form. So when you are given an explicit, the common ratio is always the base of that exponent n minus 1. So there's our common ratio, and the number out front is always the first term. So our first term is 3, our common ratio is 2. Now we can write a recursive definition. The recursive definition is the one that has 2 lines. We identify the first term in the first line. So our recursive definition is 3 when n equals 1. That's the first term. And then the second line, how do you get any term after that? Where you're going to take your common ratio 2, multiply it by a sub n minus 1, and this just means the previous term. So you're going to take 2 times your previous term, and you're going to follow that rule for every term after 1.